Here we go. Oh, wow. Okay. Sorry for everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back. Episode number 185 of the Club and Sub podcast. Tonight we're talking UFC Vegas 94. Amanda Lemos taking on Virna Jandiroba. Virna's first main event. I don't believe it's Lemos' first main event, is it? I don't.
No, because the Andrade fight was
so.
a main event. No.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
But yeah, guys, as usual, we're brought to you guys by Fight Numbers. We shout them out every week, but you got John Kelly, Pepe Sylvia, Ozzy, and Chad and Evan over there. Great crew of guys. For a 30% discount off your first month subscription, use the promo code CLUB. Again, they got the live odds screen, gives you live odds in real time on fights as they're going on and shows you what books you can get which odds where. They have got picks from Evan, Ozzy, and Pepe that you can get there. And they have John Kelly's DFS projections, which some might say, I would say, I am some, are number one in the industry. So check it out, fightnumbers.com. Great crew of guys over there. Huge value add. If you're a capper, if you're a DFS player, they got a bit of everything going on over there. As usual, guys, please drop a like, subscribe. We'd appreciate it. It would help us out a bunch. And yeah, I mean, let's hop into it. Last week, we had where were they? Oh, UFC Denver up in the altitude.
Yes.
And it was a pretty good week for me. I won 4.83 units on pre-fight bets. I had Charles Johnson by decision for a half unit. That did not cash. I had 2 units. Sorry. Never mind. We're going to start with lags here first, and then I'll get into my spiel here.
And the reason why we will do that, because where he just left off there, Charles Johnson, even though I did not have a bet on Joshua Van, we did have a shot bet. So I do owe John 2 shots after I am done with this because it was a 2-for-1 shot special. But so I lost 1.1 unit on Drew Dover, 1.1 unit on Fremd. I thought Fremd was just an awful bet in general. Dover, I was happy taking the bet just because just strength of schedule, just absolute, just jump up in competition that short notice. Obviously, the bet didn't play out. I mean, Silva, huge hitter, looked great on the counter. And then I also had Elder by sub or decision, which was minus 165. Thought that was a great bet.
That was really nice.
A lot of people were overrating, I think, the KO, in my opinion. But what I will talk about, though, I feel like pick'em fights in general, I was looking at my Bet MMA, and I just struggle a ton with them. So I feel like I just got to really pick my spots with the just straight minus 110s. Just really struggling on those. But, John, you talk about your great night while I will take 2 shots. Shout out to Charles Johnson. And Tito's.
All right,
Cheers.
That's savage. Going straight vodka shot. That is old school. Yeah, I had 2 units, Charles, plus 170. I got reverse CLV'd horribly on that. I was like looking at it. And I'm like, man, like what am I missing with this? This is wild. I did add his decision, but ultimately with losing decision bet, I was like plus 2.9 units on that fight. I had 2 units on Jasmine Jasdavicius at plus 140. I mean, that kind of went just like we kind of broke it down on the show. Jasmine, as Pepe said, stay vicious, baby. Jasmine, too big for her, too experienced, short notice in altitude, just beat her up. I mean, that's what happens, with these fights. Like, I think Fatima Klein's going to be good, but she's got 6 pro fights against nobodies and taking a short notice fight up a weight class, man. That is never it. I had a unit on Erosa and Christian Rodriguez under 2.5 rounds at plus 125, which was nice. And yeah, I had Dober to win 2 units at minus 106. It was a really nice performance by Gene Silva. I'm not like, I obviously think he was a side. Like, my Drew bet was a poor bet. At the same time, though, I also think like the fight had kind of weird sequencing in that I felt like if he didn't get the spinning elbow landed on him with 10 seconds left in round 2, it was about to be 1-1 going into round 3,
Agreed.
And like, I still think Dober's gas tank is better. And if you didn't have like his face like falling off of him, it might have gone differently. Again, though, I don't feel good about the bet at all. Like, Silva seems like he's the real deal. I just feel like the narrative that I'm seeing, like Silva dominated him versus what the reality of the fight was, is kind of different. But yeah, I mean, Lou said my living room's highlight of the week. Oh yeah, man. One day I'll actually buy this virtual living room. One day. Maybe after this week, we'll see. But yeah, I mean, it was a good week for me. I mean, live was crazy. I hit a absolute banger plus 2,000 on Muslim Salikov with like 20 seconds left in round 3 against Pond. So, yeah, it was a fun week. It was a fun card. I was brutally hungover for it, so it was nice to stay up till 2 a.m. and win. So, anyway, guys, we'll hop into it. What's going on, Aussie? What's going on, Josh? What's going on, everybody in the chat? Yeah, I mean, let's get into this card. It's an interesting one. It's a weird one. Like, I'm kind of expecting it to be a fairly fun card, but also
early start time too. 5 o'clock.
Is it an early start time? 5 o'clock for the prelims, right?
Yeah.
I thought you were going to tell me main card. I was about to get real excited.
Yeah, sorry. Can't get you that excited, John. Sorry.
It was fucking. Let me tell real quick aside before we go into the main card here. It was so like my wife and I we went pretty hard on Friday night last week, and so I didn't realize it was a late start time. I was thinking I'm going to settle in. Maybe I won't go live on stream until the main card while the kids are awake. No, it was a late start time. And so me, being the resourceful human I am and being exhausted, I was like, I need to drink something during this. So I made myself a ranch water. Are you familiar with the ranch water, Legs?
I am not, other than I know like the seltzer brand, I think, called Ranch Water.
So a ranch water, the idea is, and I apologize to everybody for the longest side here, but a ranch water, the idea is people in Texas used to get, very, very hot when they were working outside jobs. They wanted to come inside, have a water, but obviously spike it a bit. So it's a seltzer with tequila, lime juice, and if you want a dash of Grand Marnier. So I was putting like 3 to 4 shots of tequila into it and a shot of Grand Marnier. And it was good. I was like, this is exactly what I needed. It's going to keep me awake.
I was going to say, you could probably buy this in a can then. Sorry to cut you off there.
That you could. It would be great.
I'm pretty sure that's exactly what it is in a can.
And I was like, I could have 1 or 2 of these and I'll be fine. Josh saying it sounds like a Brokeback Mountain drink. It does sound like that. Pepe said he might fuck around and get hammered early this card. I may do the same. Yeah. But yeah, so like I had 2 by the main card and I was like, that should probably be it. Like I'm feeling pretty good. But then, after the Dober fight, I was like, it's kind of a bummer. I'm going to make 1 more before the night's over. Ended horribly. I mean, the night ended great, but I found myself, I haven't vomited from drinking in probably like 6 years. I found myself vomiting at 2:30 a.m. and then waking up with my oldest at 6 a.m. the next morning. The moral of the story is, if you're going to drink ranch water, it's pretty fucking good, but limit yourself to 1. Anyway, with that out of the way, we jump into the main card, or not the main card, we jump into the card here. First fight of the night, Muhammad Usman, Thomas Peterson. Current price, we got Muhammad Usman as a favorite, -130. The comeback on Thomas Peterson, +110. I actually bet this today. I bet 2 units on Thomas Peterson, +120. Honestly, I went into tape for this fight planning to bet Muhammad Usman. I didn't really make any secret of the fact that I'm not a big Thomas Peterson fan. When he fought Jamal Pogus, I bet Pogus in that fight. But going back and watching the Usman tape, I feel outside of like 6 minutes of just jabbing Jake Collier, like the guy has been awful in the UFC. I know he's 3-1, but I mean, he was firmly losing to Zach Pauga before he knocked him out. The Junior Tafa fight, I mean, that almost doesn't even count because Junior Tafa can't grapple at all. Like if you put that guy in the mat, there's just nothing happening down there. Yeah. And then it's like the Collier fight. And even in the Collier fight, Collier had a horrible cut. He was totally gassed. And Usman needed to grapple for his life in round 3 to like pull out that fight. And then you go back to his last fight, Nick Parkin, and like this is a guy who can cause you no physical harm. Literally no physical harm. And he basically just lost the fight from not doing enough via leg kicks. Like that's it. But then you go and we fast forward to Thomas Peterson. Obviously, he lost to Jamal Pogues. And, I mean, to be clear, the strength of schedule he fought before Jamal Pogues is tragic. But at the same time, volume wrestling at heavyweight is kind of a cheat code in and of itself because so few of them can wrestle. And I guess the argument to the contrary would be, well, Muhammad Usman's a wrestler. But he doesn't really come from a great wrestling background. Nothing like his brothers at all. And so, and the limited footage of Usman on bottom really isn't great. And so I'm looking at the fight and I feel there's the potential for dominant Peterson upside if he can get easy takedowns. If the market ends up being right and he can't, though, my big question is, like, is it a blowout on the feet? And theoretically, I mean, maybe Usman can win this fight just off of optics of landing the much harder shots. But I mean, this is a guy who gets outstruck by 1.5 distance strikes per minute, like, which is pretty awful. And it's pretty evident in the tape. He's very low volume. And he's fighting a guy in Peterson who's just going to keep coming forward. You know, I know he knocked out Zach Pauga, but I don't really think he hits that hard for a heavyweight, you know, like in the aggregate. And so I look at it and I feel like the worst case scenario is they're fighting on the feet here, in which case Usman's probably a better striker, but Peterson's way busier and he's going to be the one going forward. Whereas the best case scenario is Peterson can get takedowns and easy top time and win the fight easily. I just struggle to see Usman winning this fight dominantly sans a KO. And so with that being the case, I kind of feel like Peterson deserves to be a small favorite here. So I'm on him. What do you think here?
So I was originally going into tape thinking I was going to be on Usman, and I more or less kind of come down to where you're at in terms of like why I'm passing on the Usman side, just because I don't think where is the dominant upside outside of a KO. I do think he largely can keep it standing though, because me, unlike I guess most people this week, I just don't rate Peterson's wrestling that highly. I think Usman can largely keep the fight standing, can probably win the fight on optics, landing the harder shots. So yeah, I lean Usman. I think Usman should be a slight favorite.
I guess where I disagree is Peterson, like, he comes from a pretty legit wrestling background. Like, single legs aren't something you really see heavyweights do. And I know Pogus did a good job defending it, but like, keep in mind, Pogus came from 205 originally. Like, he is an actual athlete. Like, you could go back and watch him. And one of the reasons I bet him was because if you went back and watched him against like Alex Polizzi, who obviously very, very good wrestler himself, you know, right. Pogus was able to scramble competitively with him. And I feel like Pogus outside of the top 10 to 15 is like one of the worst matchups in the division for Peterson. Which, to be clear, my view on Peterson hasn't changed at all. It's just in heavyweight, if you have like takedown variety and a decent top game, you don't really need much else, unless he'll get into the top 10. But yeah, we'll see what happens. Yeah, I mean, John Kelly pointed out, he is a 2-time state championship, but not good enough for my man Lags over here. Not good enough. He's not like a Thomas Peterson.
Nope.
Moving on, though. Second fight of the night. Curious to get your take here. Interesting one. I know a lot of people with fairly passionate takes on each side. We got Luana Carolina. She's minus 119. The comeback on Lucy Pudilova is minus 101. What are your thoughts here, Lags?
So I was telling you about pick'em fights and how I'm trying to obviously stay away from those. I mean, but this is one where, like, if I was going to pick a side, it would have to be the Pudilova side, just based on the grappling upside for me. Like, I know people are talking about Carolina's defensive grappling improvements, this and that, but girls that will shoot single and double legs like Pudilova can get Carolina down, and so like 2 takedowns could be the fight. But at the same time, like, Pudilova's optics for me, her gas tank's not great. So, like, I largely think this is probably a competitive fight. I largely do think it's a competitive fight standing as well, even though Carolina probably is the better striker. I don't think her margins are that wide on the feet. So, yeah, I'd lean Pudilova, but no bet.
I honestly don't have a great read on this at all, because on the one hand, I see what folks who like the Pudilova side like about Pudilova. To your point, Lags, Carolina does kind of struggle if you can get to her hips, and her bottom game is quite bad. But the other side of that is it's not easy to get to her hips. Like, she does a pretty good job of pulling the arms up when you get inside on her. And, you know, it's kind of hard to compare Lucy Pudilova to Lupita Godinez, because Lupita Godinez took the fight with Carolina on like a week's notice, and she just fought 2 weeks earlier, up a weight class, whereas Pudilova is a big woman for 125. But with that being the case, I mean, Lupita Godinez is a much better wrestler than Lucy Pudilova is, and she had a hell of a hard time getting her down. Now, again, I'm not saying that that's particularly meaningful because of the dynamics in the Godinez fight. But even going to the Stoliarenko fight, Stoliarenko got her down once, but she failed the other 4 times she tried to get her down. I do think, despite being a janky, disgusting striker, Carolina does kind of manage distance pretty well and does a good job clinching up if you try to close distance on her hard. And I mean, on the feet, I feel Carolina is going to be able to outmaneuver her pretty easily. Like Pudilova, she's been in some fun wars. She's not a good striker, man. She's very, very easy to get strikes off on, and she's kind of very easy to just, stay moving against and just pick off. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you can't lay minus 119 in Carolina because if it turns out Lucy can get takedowns, she could look like a decent favorite. The problem for me, and that would be enough for me to bet her if I hadn't watched Jocelyn Edwards more or less win 2 rounds off her back. Now, you can argue all day about, whether or not that was a good decision, but the reality is we are in a year, the year 2024, the year of our Lord 2024, where judges are scoring fights based almost exclusively on damage. And now, I would argue Jocelyn Edwards didn't do much fucking damage at all in that fight.
Right.
But the point remains. You know what I mean? It's like Pudilova could get 7 minutes of control and just get kind of fucked because she didn't land any significant damage.
I mean, we saw it literally with I don't remember the girl's name she fought, but Vanessa Demopoulos.
Murata against Vinamopoulos. Yeah, I mean, it's and Murata actually did so. I'm just, I don't know. I feel like Pudilova has more upside in the fight. I just don't really like Pudilova's ground game, even on top. So I'm happy to steer away from this. It seems like a shit show. Moving on, another interesting fight here. We got Loic Radzhabov taking on Trey Ogden. This is a dead pick'em. What are your thoughts here, Legs?
I kind of could see both ways, honestly, like to that dead pick'em. Like I could see Loic getting stuck in the Ogden verse, getting jabbed up on the feet. But at the same time, like Loic is a much bigger hitter. I think he has a much more finishing upside early in the fight. I think he can land takedowns here as well. But the gas tank is obviously like that glaring concern. So I feel like early in this fight, he probably like his finishing upside early in this fight to me is probably equal to Ogden's finishing equity late in the fight. So I'd lean Loic, but not a strong read here.
It's funny because this is another one. This happened with a couple fights on this card where pre-tape, and this is like when it was like minus 135. Pre-tape, my view is like I'm definitely going to bet Loic in this fight. I feel like Ogden's probably being overrated off a couple of wins in a row here. And post-tape, I still kind of have. I don't know if I'll get to a bet on Loic, but I feel. I mean, look, the physical differences between the two are massive. Loic obviously hits very hard. He's obviously more physically strong. I think he's a better athlete than Ogden is. But, I mean, we all know he's a turbo gasser. I feel similar to what I just said about Lucy Pudilova. I think on the feet, Loic is kind of easy to just outmaneuver. I mean, honestly, I bet him against also. Yeah, and easy to
and I bet Al-Sawadi there.
Yeah, so rewatching that, I felt like not great about it, rewatching it. And like Loic does a very poor job of like forcing exchanges. He just doesn't cut the cage very well because his footwork is garbage. So he's kind of against a guy like Trey plotty. Who's extremely plotty. He's always crossing his feet over when he's trying to like cut off the cage. Against a guy like Trey who can stick a jab out there in your face and move and actually has decent footwork. That's not really an ideal matchup for him. But with that being said, I think Loic's got way more standing, finishing, and moments upside than Ogden does. Just like Ogden's harmless on the feet. Like his whole game is just around, I'm going to touch you a bunch and you're going to hopefully miss me.
He could land decent kicks here. I'll say that.
Yeah, he could. But even secondarily to that, it's kind of weird because I feel with Loic's cardio, if Ogden got on top of him in round 2 or round 3, he's got a pretty good chance to sub him. But with that being said, I think Loic could work out of Ogden getting on top of him. Whereas I think, given what I've seen of Ogden when he's been grounded a couple times in his career, I have a feeling that Loic could potentially just top time him if he grapples aggressively here and look like a decent sized favorite. I don't know. Again, it's another one that I have a tough time reading. What I will say is, I just think Glenbot's saying Loic sub 2-3. I was actually thinking the other way around it here with the Ogden, but right. I will say I think the hardware edge here massively favors Loic in this fight. I think the physicality edge does, the strength does. Obviously, cardio favors Ogden, but I feel of the two, Ogden is much more likely to just get stuck on his back for 5 minutes than Loic is, you know? So I don't know. I don't want to bet Loic against a pretty tactical, intelligent fighter like Ogden, but I do think he's got more upside in the fight.
So the only other last thing I'll add, like while we do both acknowledge that he is a huge turbo gasser, I mean, is Ogden really going to push much of a pace on the feet if it is on the feet? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it would be more
I mean, not really.
It would be more so him stuffing the takedowns, I think, that would drain Loic.
I don't even think Ogden's going to wrestle, honestly. You know, Ogden, whether he wrestles or not.
I'm saying Loic wrestling.
I'm
saying Loic wrestling him and Ogden stuffing the takedowns.
Yeah, and Aussie said he might take his head off. I agree. Yeah. Although I will say this, I think it's a live outcome. But yeah, and Zell Huber is much better at forcing exchanges than Loic is, and he had a very, very difficult time of it. Granted, it was his debut, so I kind of give him a bit of a pass for it. But yeah, I don't know, man. It's the kind of fight that if I took a side to put money on and I lost, I'd feel like really upset with myself in retrospect after it. So I'm pretty okay not being.
How about this? Just to I know we spent a ton of time on this fight specifically, but like market wise, like we both bet like overs and GTDs like against Moda, and Moda, like relatively speaking, decently hard hitter. I mean, so I would say Loic probably a bigger hitter than him, whereas we're looking over 2.5, like minus 230 here. Like GTDs are like minus 200. Yeah.
That seems pretty large, honestly. That feels like a big number. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's worth considering. But let's move on though.
Yep.
I shouldn't say I like nobody in this fight. Next fight, Miranda Maverick, Deone Barbosa. Current price, Maverick minus 220, Barbosa plus 185. It's another one where I thought there might be some value on Barbosa before I looked at it at the matchup and the tape a bit deeper. I honestly think the line's fine. I mean, yeah, I suppose there's some grappling equity on the Barbosa side, but honestly, I kind of think Maverick has more grappling equity than Barbosa does. Hot take. I just think she's a better wrestler than Barbosa is. She's got better gas. She's obviously, Maverick, I feel like, is the kind of woman you need to be like very, very aggressive with. And you look at the two women who really dogged her in the grappling, and it's Yasmin and Erin Blanchfield. Like, who fucking cares? Other than that, she's dominated in the grappling just about every woman she's fought. So I don't really care about those matchups, and I don't see much that Barbosa offers similar to the two. Decent jiu-jitsu player, decent wrestler, but I don't think she's as good at either as that. On the feet, decent striker, but again, I don't think she's as physical a striker as the women who have given Miranda Maverick issues, historically speaking. Can I see upside for Barbosa in this fight via takedowns or maybe some boxing? Sure. Like, it's not hard to see where she would have success. I just feel like, though, the market's looked at some of her bad performances and is kind of overjudging her for it, even though her only 3 losses in the UFC are Macy Barber in a fight she probably deserved to win, Erin Blanchfield, and Yasmin. And like, Yasmin and Erin are top tier grapplers. I don't think Barbosa is anywhere near the level of either of them. Macy Barber is a top 5 fighter. I mean, she beat Jillian Robertson. She's beaten Andrea Lee. I think I trust her. I mean, she's very rarely been outlanded at distance. I kind of trust her in the striking a little bit more. I think she's a better wrestler, and I think she's going to win round 3 at a large clip. And to me, that's really the big thing. If they had commensurate cardio, maybe you could sell me on Deone Barbosa plus 180 here, but they don't, and that's the reality. And so if I think Miranda's going to win round 3 at a huge clip, and I don't really see an edge for Barbosa in either rounds 1 or 2, I don't really see how there's much value on plus 180. And then you just couple in the fact that Deone Barbosa just went life and death with Ernesto Carrasqueta, whereas Maverick's beating anybody outside of like some of the top women in the division. I feel like minus 220 is fine. No interest in betting it. What do you think?
I honestly originally thought I was going to be betting Barbosa just because I think like early in the fight she could have takedown success, could have striking success, because personally I think she probably is the better striker, or if not, it's close.
I think she's a more physical striker for sure.
For sure. But the cardio is a glaring hole. You touched on the round 3 nature as well. Again, I think she loses that at a high clip. So it's tough to get to argue against like Maverick minus 185, minus 200 range.
Yeah, agreed. Moving on. No, I'm gonna stick with you here, Lags. Interesting fight. I sort of have like I don't even want to say strong opinion, but I have an opinion, and I think it's one many share. But we got Brian Keller, Cody Gibson, current price, Cody Gibson -190, comeback on Keller +165. What are your thoughts here?
Well, I'm going to give a shout out to a C here and say pass.
Really? You haven't looked at this fight at all?
I have mildly looked into this, and I have really no interest. I mean, I think it's Kelleher pass, but to me, Kelleher seems absolutely washed.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was going to ask you after you gave me a breakdown, which you didn't do.
That's I know. Sorry, John. Yep.
I have mixed feelings because I think Cody Gibson is really quite poor. Like, I was kicking myself for like a week after not betting Miles Johns against him because, honestly, I feel that line was a complete byproduct of everybody watching him versus Brad Katona. Whereas when you watch the rest of Cody Gibson's career, any guy who hits even a little hard, he doesn't push the pace against. Any guy who's a decent wrestler who has tried to wrestle Cody Gibson has more or less had success. He's been subbed a bunch of times in his career. He's old. I don't think he's very good. Now, Brian Kelleher is not very good either, but Brian Kelleher, for most of his career at the he's been like a bottom tier UFC fighter, you know, like that. That's what he's
losing to top end guys lately, at least. That's at least.
Yeah, I mean, he shouldn't be getting fights with some of those guys though. Like that. So that's like my big thing because he looked horrible against Umar. He looked horrible against Mario Batista. But I mean, Umar and Mario Batista would literally just like take a steaming shit on top of Cody Gibson's head, you know? So it's like, what do I put into that? I worry a bit how quickly he kind of quit against Batista. Like, just got taken down, gave his back, and that was it. But the Cody fight, the Garbrandt fight, he kind of looked fine until he got knocked out. And obviously, Garbrandt's a huge hitter. But yeah, I mean, in the context of this fight, it's possible Kelleher shot. It's also possible Cody Gibson shot. Like I said, he's pretty old himself.
Yeah.
I feel Gibson probably has a small volume edge, but I think Boom hits harder. And something you have seen from Kelleher in the not too distant past is when he's had a big grappling edge, he tends to go for it and just wrestles hard. And I think of the two, Kelleher is probably, unless he's just totally washed, is probably more likely to get takedowns in top time. So I don't know. I have the similar concerns to you about Kelleher being washed, but I do think at the number he's got a fair amount of upside in this fight. So I lean Boom. I don't know if I'll get there to a bet, but yeah, I mean, anybody to say Gibson's 1-5 in the UFC, and he's 1-5 for a reason. You know, the guy is just not. He's just not very good. That's just the reality. He had a fun fight with Brad Katona, but Brad Katona couldn't hurt you. You know, so
yeah, I could have a good scrap with Brad.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. A lot of people could. You know, Brad's good, but he's not exactly imposing. So
no.
And Brad hurt him, of all people, you know. Anyway, though, we move on. Interesting fight here. I will throw it to you again since you passed on the last one. We got Haider Amil. He's taking on Jung Young Lee. Current price, Jung Young Lee -200. The comeback on Amil +170. What are your thoughts here?
All right. First, John, got to give a shout out.
Yes, sir.
Drink of the summer.
Is it a Surfside? Dude,
no,
fuck off.
Come on.
Surfside is the drink of the summer. That is the drink of 2024. Have you tried Surfside? Have you tried Surfside?
They are good. No, I appreciate the recommendation. They are good.
You've tried it, but you're drinking a Sunny D right now.
Listen, I picked it up with the Tito's.
I don't believe
you. They didn't have any Surfsides there. They didn't have any Surfsides there. What do you want me to say? So I literally texted you about this fight and saying that I didn't have a great read on it. And honestly, because I want to bet Amil, honestly, because I do think that he can push the pace, push the pressure, land takedowns potentially as well. But I do think he's super hittable coming into the pocket. I do think Lee obviously hits super hard, but his work rate's just not up to stuff really. So it's got to be dog or pass for me.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of where I am. I think Lee has the physicality and skill set to cover his price, to be honest. Yeah, but what is the over here? Pepe just asked his over free. I haven't.
It's
even
like
looked at it.
The over unders pick 'em pretty much over 2.5.
I don't mind that honestly. That does seem like
I think it's going to be sweaty. I'll be honest.
Well, Amil gets into sweaty fights. So that's the thing. Like Hyder Amil, I'd be looking to bet someone like that against Lee, but there's two big things. Number one, Amil gets hit square in the face every single fight. The dude,
yes.
I'll give him credit.
And that's why I think I'm passing here, just because the dude is so hittable.
He's got huge balls. Like, he's not afraid to get hit. He'll just keep coming at you. But, I mean, honestly, even rewatching the Fernie fight, like, Amil looked a justified favorite, but also he had a couple really hairy moments in that fight. And so now he's fighting a guy in Lee who, I don't know, I feel like Lee's power is a bit overrated off of, fighting Blake Builder and a bunch of guys on, road to the UFC who are all, lower level guys. But I do think Lee's more physical than him. I think he's a better athlete. I think he hits harder. And I also think if anybody is likely to get top time, I sort of think it's Lee. I don't think Lee's a great grappler, but he just seems very, very strong to me. And Amil, for as aggressive as he has been, Amil to me strikes me as a guy who, I don't know. I don't think he's that strong, honestly. So I don't know. I lean to the Lee side. I tend to think Lee's got him outskilled everywhere. I'm definitely not laying minus 200 on Jung Young Lee. I think that over Pepe shouted out is interesting. It's kind of interesting, although, yeah, I mean, it is kind of interesting because honestly, I bet under an Amil Fernie and it was like plus 185 for under 2.5. And I bet it on fight day. It's not like I grabbed an early number.
Right.
The market was like, this is minus 230 to go over. And now it's saying this is pick 'em. And Amil, he is hittable, but he's got great recoverability. And Lee seems super durable. So, yeah, I mean, over's kind of interesting. I think Lee's going to win, though. I think he's the better fighter by a decent margin here. Moving on, we got Duho Choi. He's taking on Bill Algeo. Current price, Algeo is minus 160. Comeback on Choi, plus 140. Bill Algeo really left my asshole sore, so to speak, during his last fight. I think I had 4 units on it, minus 180, and he closed like minus 300. I was in attendance. It would have been a great night had he won, and instead it ended up being a losing night. I literally crushed that card, aside from Algeo and Vicente Luque, who, of course, were my two biggest bets on the card. And
all right. Go ahead.
No, let's talk about this for a second. Was it an early stoppage?
I know. That's literally what I was going to ask you. And not that I think it was by any means. But
it wasn't.
I don't think it was a horrific stoppage, but you could argue, I think, to the slightest bit, it was a slight early stoppage. He wasn't down. He wasn't, he was still showing he was in there a little bit. I think it was slightly early, but again, not a bad stoppage.
I think you could have let it. I think I would have preferred them to let it go for a couple more seconds. But at the same time, it's not like he got hit, wobbled once, and they were like, that's it. He got hurt and then ate like 7 bombs and stumbled, and the referee stopped it. Like, it's kind of funny because everybody, myself included, who had a bet on it at the time was like, that stoppage was awful. But that's like, I'm thinking with all the money I have on it, and then when you rewatch it, it's like, yeah, but I mean, we don't want to see someone die in the octagon either. Not that was what was about to happen, but you know what I mean. I'd rather have it be called like 10 seconds early than someone have severe brain damage. Yeah, like Dogfather said, defender, like he wasn't really, like Bill stood in front of him for a couple seconds, and then he ate 2 giant overhands and turned his back. And it's like at that point, like once you kind of turn away, I can't really get on a referee for stopping the fight. Yeah, So should they have let it go on? Probably. Also, fucking Josh in here shitting on. Josh is my boy, but this guy's shitting on good drinks. Fucking like. I remember when men used to drink man drinks. He likes Smirnoff too. I don't mind a Smirnoff seltzer or an old school Smirnoff. Yeah. I also like a good whiskey. What is wrong with wanting to enjoy your drink during the summertime when you're planning to drink 10 drinks? Huh, Josh?
Listen, high noons. Anybody going to show
high noons are great. Although I'm a little.
Great.
I went through like a solid like 24 months of enjoying White Claw, and then I kind of pivoted to high noon.
High noon's the greatest seltzer.
I just drank it too long, like both of them. I'm at the point where it's like, high noon's still pretty good. White Claw, I'm just like, ugh. That was like 2020 through 2023. Like, I'm good. I don't need to do it again. Anyway, back to the fight we were talking about.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting fight because on the one hand, it's another one I was planning to bet Bill going in.
Same.
There are things about Bill's game I like. He's he's longer, he's taller, throws a ton of volume, generally outstrikes his opponents at distance, kind of has sneaky power. He's very, very hard to grapple. And Duho Choi, my recollection, it had been him looking awful against Kyle Nelson, and that being his only fight in like 4 years. But honestly, on rewatch of Choi, I actually thought he looked better than I recalled against Nelson. Like, he counter grappled him okay. On the feet, outside of Nelson landing like one big overhand in round 2, Choi fucked him up in that fight standing. And that, at the time, I didn't find that impressive because I thought it would happen. But I was like, everybody does the Kyle Nelson. But in the time since, Kyle Nelson's knocked out Algeo, he outstruck Virna Garcia, he outstruck Blake Builder. He's actually shown that he's like a decent MMA fighter beyond just being a powerhouse. And Choi was kind of just dunking on him. I do have some concerns about Choi's chin. I mean, he has for a guy who hasn't had that many fights, he's taken a lot of damage. Like, you go back to that Cub Swanson fight, and it was just an all-out war. I mean, go watch it if you haven't. It's like one of the most fun fights ever. But then you see the Charles Jourdain fight. Now, obviously, he took some time off, but I didn't love how he was reacting to shots against Nelson either. But what I will say is Choi's very precise as a striker. Very, very fast hands, hits really hard, hits the body, and arguably most important to the context of this fight, hits leg kicks really, really hard. And Bill's there to be kicked, man. Karate style fighter. And Choi was like really, and Kyle Nelson's got some thick legs, man. Bill does not really, and Choi was lighting his legs up. And so, yeah, I mean, Nelson's output and cardio is concerning for me, as is the frame. But I think it's going to be a competitive fight. If this goes 15, I would be surprised if Bill was able to dominate. I just think Choi's the harder hitter, who's probably a bit more of an athlete. I'm not saying Choi's as good as Andre Fili. I doubt it. But I think he's more physical than him. And Fili in that fight was just way more assertive. And I can imagine that happening. I don't have a great read on it. I tend to think the line's okay, maybe a little wide. What do you think?
So for starters, for those who didn't know, Muslim Salikov plus 2,000 is what paid for John's house. So shout out to Muslim for paying for his living room. But similar to you, I was coming into this fight thinking that I was going to bet Bill for those same reasons. Much longer, much more volume, much better cardio. But two things I have issues with. Well, one, Bill is super hittable, both to the calves, like you had mentioned, and to the head in general. The guy's very hittable, hands down, all the time. But two, like all the advantages that I think he has that we both have talked about, I think it's likely going to happen in the back half of the fight where I think Choi might slow down a bit. Like, I don't think there's any huge pre-fight edge to Bill at, minus 160, minus 170. I think betting Bill after a round is probably the better option. But yeah, Choi's power is really what's keeping me off of Bill here. But I'd bet Bill after a round, if anything.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you that live is almost certainly better than pre is. Bro, Josh talking to this. My car is fucking pristine, man. I promise you.
John's got
my office
in there.
My office might not be. My car is absolutely pristine. Moving on, though. Another pretty good fight here. We got Cody Durden. Yeah. He's taking on Bruno Silva. I feel like this is one that everybody's planting a flag on, and it's one really? I've seen a lot of people planting a flag on the Bruno Silva side, and I'm assuming a lot of people are betting Cody. Cody's minus 120, comeback Bruno plus 100. I mean, what do you think, Legs?
I don't have a really strong taker, but to me, Cody's the minute winner here, and I feel like Silva is the moment winner. Like, I favor Cody in terms of the wrestling. I think in the striking, I think he still can compete, even though Bruno is the harder hitter of the two. So to me, honestly, I'm looking to bet like a Cody decision only if it's a decent price, because I do think he's, like I said, I think he's largely the minute winner here. I think he can compete standing as well.
Yeah, it's an interesting fight. This is another one. I was planning to bet Bruno going into the tape. I was like, I'm almost I remembered his fight with Tagir. I'm like, he should probably handle him. And then after taping it, because in my head, the way I envisioned it before I went into the tape was Bruno's probably not going to get controlled. And so he should probably outstrike Cody fairly firmly.
Yeah.
And then after taping it, it's like, I'm a lot less convinced he's going to outstrike Cody than I was pre-tape. I feel like Bruno can be cracked like pretty easily. I mean, Tagir was doing fine with Bruno on the feet, and I think Cody's. I mean, we even saw it when he fought Tagir. I think Cody's a much better striker than Tagir is. Obviously, I think the biggest tool for Bruno in this fight are the leg kicks. You know, he obviously rips pretty hard calf kicks. But man, I mean, Cody Durden hung in there with Chris Gutierrez on short notice while he was getting his legs chewed off at 135 and just never fucked off in that fight, even when he was dead gassed. And so I think they'll be impactful, but I guess the way I'm looking at it is Cody's been the much more active fighter. Bruno hasn't fought that much. I think it's going to be close on the feet. That's what I think. I think Bruno carries a bit more pop in his shots than Cody does, and obviously the leg kick upside. But I do sort of think Cody is going to compete, if not outvolume him outright. And I think of the two, I favor Cody more to get takedowns or to get more takedowns in this fight. Yeah. So when I'm thinking about it, I think the price is like about right. Maybe it could be a bit wider for Cody. I just think I'm with you, Legs. I think Bruno has more finishing upside, obviously. You know,
right? And to comment on that real quick, so like the Bruno no scorecards is like minus 210. Pretty obvious.
So it's priced into the market. Yeah.
So I think the decision only, if we're looking at like a minus 150, minus 165 for Cody, I think that's not a bad price personally.
Yeah, that's not bad. I don't know. Because Bruno's, I don't know. It's another one that I think it's kind of interesting to see how it plays out. Because if you told me Cody wins an easy 30-27 where he lands like 6-7 takedowns and out volumes him by 20 strikes, I wouldn't be shocked. But also, if you told me Bruno's just got way too much horsepower for Cody, counter grapples easily, and either finishes him or wins a dominant decision, I wouldn't be shocked. Which means the line's probably in the right-ish area. So I don't know. I'm excited for it though. I think it's a banger.
I think it's one of the best fights on the card. And last thing I'll add, I feel like people do like overplay Cody's cardio quite a bit.
He fights through fatigue very well.
Yeah.
Moving on, though, this is my biggest bet on the card. We have Kurt Holobaugh. He's taking on Kanan Krzyzewski. I have 2.5 units on Holobaugh plus 125. I think Kurt's just a better fighter, honestly. I know I've had to hear from every single person this week that I talked about this fight with about how bad Kurt Holobaugh's hips are, as if that's not something that's been the case for the last decade. It's not a new thing. It's not because Kurt is aging. Like, you go back throughout his career, the guy's always been able to be taken down. And I feel like the market's like, oh, man, Trey Ogden top-timed him. But, like, I came on the show and I was like, Trey Ogden's going to top-time him if he gets takedowns. It seemed like pretty straightforward. But most guys who have taken him down haven't been able to top-time him, you know? Austin Hubbard, pretty good grappler, kind of heavy on top, couldn't top-time him. Hayoni Barcelos couldn't top-time him. Thiago Moises got like 6.5 minutes of control on 4 takedowns, but nothing like Ogden did. Now, he's 37. Is he getting worse? Probably. Yeah. But Kanan Krzyzewski, I mean, yes, he's got 9 subs in his career, but he's never been a volume wrestler his entire career. And so, one, I'd be very surprised if he turns out to be a volume wrestler here. Number 2, I don't think takedowns will come easy for him because I don't think he's a great wrestler. And number 3, I don't think he's going to top time. And so more or less what I think is going to happen is it's going to be a lot of brawling. And I think Kanan's got a more diverse striking arsenal than what Kurt has. But, I mean, Kurt's really, really durable. Very, very hard to hurt on the feet. I think Kurt's the better pocket boxer. I think Kanan is, of the two, a lot easier to hit than Kurt is. And I'm not even, I know Brenner caught him behind the ear, but I'm not even talking about that fight. I think Kanan is not the most durable ever. This guy got hurt on Contender Series. He has been knocked out before the UFC. I saw him get hurt a couple times regionally. Like, I think this guy can get cracked. And so I think on the feet, they're going to brawl mostly, but I trust Kurt more in a brawl. I actually think, despite all the narrative around Kurt being top time, if you go back and watch this guy fight John David, or John David, however you'd pronounce it, John David's a kickboxer, and this guy was getting to Kanan's hips with zero issue at all, and Kanan was just playing shitty guard on bottom against him. And I was saying to somebody there, they're like, Kurt's not going to top time. I'm like, probably not. They're probably going to.
But he could.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, if Holobaugh comes out shooting, like, I would not be shocked if Holobaugh. By a lot, in my opinion. Yeah. Like, don't get me wrong. He could get taken down and controlled. But I feel like if Kurt wants takedowns, he could get them, control him, or sub him. He's fought way better competition. He's much more experienced. He's more durable. I think he hits harder. Yeah, I mean, I made Kurt like minus 150 here. I really am not that impressed with Kanan. I'm on him pretty big. What do you think, Legs?
So before I talk about the matchup, just talk about narrative in general. I feel like a lot of people in the space in general, just when they think of an old guy, they're like, oh, man, his durability, it's not that good. It's not that good. It's like Kurt's durability he's been knocked out once in his career. I mean, and a lot of brawls. Yeah. So I actually have 2 bets on this fight. So I bet Kurt, similar to you, at plus 110, and I also bet the under 2.5 rounds at minus 130.
I like that.
So similar to you, I do think that on the feet, largely these guys are going to get after it. It's going to be a brawl, and I do, like I said, I think Kurt's more durable of the 2. I think he probably is the harder hitter of the 2, and in terms of the grappling, I think he's the better wrestler if he goes to it. Obviously, there is that concern of him like getting top time, but like you had already mentioned, Kanan's not a huge volume wrestler, so. To me, I think
he took down Thiago Moises twice. Kurt did.
To me, worst case scenario, if you're betting the money line for Kurt and the under 2.5, I think you're pushing.
I tend to agree with you. I wouldn't say it's the worst case scenario, but like I do agree. I think
you cash with both, but yeah, yep.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I actually like that. Moving on. Steve Garcia taking on Sungwoo Choi. Fucking banger here. This is like whoever like Mike's MMA picks put it out there. Yeah. What did he say? Was he like me to thank the MMA gods or something like that? It was a great tweet.
We'll give a shout out to Mike while we're
here. Anyway, this is you tell me when you got it. This fight is mayhem, ladies and gentlemen. You got it?
So first, Mike's MMA picks if you're not familiar with him. Whoever is responsible for booking Steve Garcia versus Sungwoo Choi deserves a medal.
I agree. I absolutely. Yeah. Are you ready for 15 minutes of grappling? For that'll inevitably ensue now that we've jinxed it?
Actually, that's another thing I was actually going to ask you on this fight, because on DraftKings they have both of these guys at a half a takedown. And I believe Steve was at plus 130 for the over. And then I think Sungwoo Choi was plus 150 to the over.
I really don't think takedowns are happening unless someone's. I mean, they could happen. But I wrote this up on my Twitter, but I feel as if Garcia is the better wrestler of the 2, but I think.
Agreed.
He's pretty unlikely to have much success. I mean,
unless he gets hurt.
Yeah, but even then, like Choi fought Evloev for 15 minutes, and Evloev couldn't really hold him down. It was mostly clinch control. He fought Gavin Tucker, who eventually subbed him, but it took him 4 takedowns to do it, and Choi kept working up. Obviously, the Caceres fight happened, and so I guess Garcia could get a back take. But yeah, I mean, Aussie said it too. I agree. But I mean, that's not really Garcia's game, is like, opportunistic back takes.
I was gonna say the Charlie and Tavarez fight, it was literally after he got hurt. I mean, he got hurt by like an axe, no, not even an axe kick. What
he got hurt like 3 times in that fight.
Yeah. He got dropped like 3 times, and that's when he resorted to the grappling.
But I do think like they're gonna mostly stand and bang here. And
agreed.
I mean, I know Sungwoo Choi has been hurt a bunch of times in the past, and I know Steve Garcia's got heavy hands, but you know who else has been hurt a bunch of times in the past? Steve Garcia. You know who else has really heavy hands? Sungwoo Choi. And I think of the 2, when I watch them, I feel like Choi actually has some like slick counter boxing that he can land, and I mean, Garcia doesn't have counter striking. I'm biting the mouthpiece, I'm entering, and I'm throwing hammers. But he enters with his chin straight in the air all the time. I mean, other than the Hooper fight where he just assassinated Hooper instantly, he's been hurt in like every fight.
I was going to say, just before you mentioned that, like looking at the 2 careers, like going through the tape and everything, when you go through Steve's tape, it's like it's all a meme show.
It's crazy.
It's an absolute meme show. Whereas, like, at least on the Choi side, like, you could say, he's getting hurt, this and that, but like, there's at least some credibility to some of the rounds.
He outstruck Aaron's, which is aged pretty well, I think.
Caceres fight wasn't that bad either.
No, he looked good, and that's what I'm saying. So, like, I look at the line, and I feel, our boy Gugabe likes to use the term over-indexed on finishes or under-indexed on finishes. I feel Steve Garcia has under-indexed on getting finished. This guy's been hurt.
I'll be honest, I've never heard that from him, but okay.
All right. This guy gets hurt every fight, and somehow he's only been knocked out once in the UFC, right? I think.
Let me confirm. Well, it was Mahashate was the only one, I think, but let me confirm.
He lost to Luis Pena, but I think the only guy to knock him out is Mahashate. And I know Shaylin dropped him bad. I know he got hurt bad by Mahashate before he got knocked out. Mel Costa had his back in that fight. I mean, the dude
got dropped like
the Tavarez fight. He got hurt 3 times in that fight. He's just very, very easy to hit. Go watch his fight with Chepe Mariscal regionally. It's just like Rock'em Sock'em Robots. So, I think both guys can be killed. Obviously, I think both guys can kill the other. I just feel like Choi's fought a slightly better level of competition. I like his striking. It's a bit tighter. To your point, I think. Yeah, Aussie said Garcia sub. I don't think that's crazy because I could see a club sub too for Garcia easily.
Yeah.
But I think
round one sub is for Garcia to that point.
Actually, what would be about
club
21,
sub,
probably.
Yeah.
It's got to be around that. Let me know.
So let's see. Bet Online has Garcia round one sub at 14-1. So you could probably get like 16-1.
But if you can get
17. But don't want to get too cute with it.
But either way, I took Choi at plus 139 for 2 units. I just feel like I think it's like almost a pick 'em fight. Honestly, I kind of lean Choi just because I think he's got a bit more technical upside. But this fight's electric. It really is. What do you think?
So to comment real quick on that sub line, so it's down to 9-1 for Garcia. So I would almost rather, if I was going to gamble on something like that, I would rather do that. But I'll be honest, John, I have no money here, but I'm willing to do a shot bet because I like Steve. I like the power.
You like
the
mean machine?
I like the mean machine, Steve. Let's go after it, John. You want it?
I'll take Sting.
All right.
I'll take Sting.
Awful, which we were talking about before the pod too. An awful nickname.
It is an awful nickname.
Sting Choi.
The song. There's got to be. If we have any Korean fans, or Korean follower or subs, like, let us know if his name at all is like Bumblebee or something like that. I don't know.
Right. Yeah.
Because there's got to be something. I agree. It's like the weirdest nickname.
Yeah. Much better options.
Anyway, though, we move on to the co-main event. Brad Tavarez. He's taking on Jung Young Park. Current price: Park minus 160. Comeback on Tavarez plus 140. What do you think, your legs?
I'll be honest. I don't think I've heard like a different take on this fight this week. I feel like in general, like Tavarez is going to stuff the takedowns. It's going to be competitive on the feet. Like Brad has looked somewhat washed-ish in his last couple fights. So from a moneyline perspective, I don't have a ton of interest. To me, if the split on Brad was a decent price, that's where I'd have an interest. But yeah, I do think Park on the feet probably is a little bit more busier. I don't think he's going to have a ton of success in the grappling.
I'm not betting this fight, to be clear, before I say this, so I don't get like dunked on next week if Brad does pull an upset.
It does seem like a complete John bet, though, Brad. Come on.
I think Park's going to beat him pretty handily, honestly. And it's weird because I am not usually a guy who wants to fade like level of competition in the manner this is. Obviously, Brad's fought most of the best guys in the world, and Park has – his recent wins are all against bums. Like, no question about it. You can't even argue. Like, Joseph Holmes, Dennis Talulin. Yeah, it's ugly. Duraev, who's not a bum, but not great either.
Yeah.
I guess why I lean to Glenbot saying Park sub for the call. Dude, don't do it to yourself. He's not going to sub Tavarez. He would need to have him badly compromised to sub him.
I don't even think he's landing two takedowns.
I don't think he's landing one takedown, honestly. Yeah. I really. He could land one.
Could just like one quick one, but yeah.
Brad's hard to fucking grapple, man. But I guess the thing is, like, I kind of leaned Tavarez when the matchup got made. And then the more I looked into it, the more I kind of feel like I think Brad's just done, man. I mean, I don't even care that he's 1-3 in his last 4. Like, normally that would almost be a bullish sign for me to bet this fight, wanting to kind of fade market sentiment on it. What really bothers me about Brad, though, is it's like, not last fight, like the RoboCop fight, I bet him in that fight too. And to me, that's forgivable at least because RoboCop, just the physicality difference is insane. But like looking into it deeper, I mean, Chris Weidman, I know Brad won the fight handedly, but Chris Weidman, I mean, he won the fight with leg kicks. Weidman was winning the boxing that fight. Like he outlanded him 30-21 in significant head strikes. That's for a guy who is a boxer. Like that is his base. He's not going to grapple offensively. He's a boxer. That is a pretty horrific look. Then you go back 2 fights prior to that, and like Bruno Silva, I mean, we all know at this point that Bruno Silva is washed and or was never that good. That's my suspicion personally.
No, I agree.
But yeah, I mean, Silva outstruck him and knocked him out, and even going back prior to...
I was going to say, even in that Weidman fight, he got hurt in that second round.
Yeah, and even going back to the Dricus fight, it's like, do I hold it against him for losing the Dricus? Of course not.
No.
Dricus is the champ. But the truth is, he only won the first round because Dricus tried to fucking do a sacrifice throw and got mounted, and he beat him up on top for a bit. But like Dricus was slowing down and just plowing forward. And Brad, I watch him now, and I feel like guys that force themselves to go forward on Brad, he just gets gun shy. He doesn't pull the trigger like he used to. He seems to me, and I mean, you can tell me if you disagree, but he seems to me to know his mortality more now than he did in the past, where it's like he's not like countered Robo hard once, but for the most part, and again, I'm not holding it against him because obviously Gregory Rodriguez, big striker, but I mean, he didn't even really try to give himself a chance there in that fight.
It's tough on that, watching that fight, and even going into that fight. Like I know RoboCop was like minus 225, and a lot of people
I bet Brad.
Right, and a lot of people were like, Brad could make that competitive fight, but it's like the physicality difference was just so massive, and the power difference was just so massive. Even though RoboCop is a little bit hittable himself, it's like Brad's got to unleash a lot of volume to even make that a competitive-ish fight.
I agree, but even like stepping back and going before that, it's like he didn't exactly separate from late-stage career Omari Akhmedov or Carlos Jr.
And I bet him there.
I put. But yeah, I don't know. I think Iron Turtle. I feel Brad at his peak. I'd easily bet. I bet Brad 2 years ago. I'd bet against him. But like, Park seems very happy to go forward, pump volume, and exchange. And I mean, given what we've seen from Brad recently, I just don't think he's going to keep up with Park on volume here unless he's hurting him, which could happen. I just don't think it's super likely. Park seems very tough. He's very durable. Park obviously seems to have more of the grappling upside. He's only 33 versus Brad, who's about to turn 37. Brad's been KO'd 5 times. I feel like much more the finishing upsides on the Park side. I don't know. If it turns out Brad's just a level above where Park is, fine. I personally think, though, that Park like minus 150 to minus 170 is fine here. What do you think?
Yeah.
Did you give your breakdown already?
Yeah.
I'll go fuck myself. All right.
That's okay, John. That's all right, John.
Main event. We got Amanda Lemos, Virna Jandiroba. Current price, Virna minus 129. Come back on Lemos plus 109. Yeah, I bet Virna small here to win a unit and a half at minus 139.
Well, John, did you hear Virna is the most of the week?
I did hear that. We'll see what happens. There's a part of me that wishes I kind of waited out for live on her, but also I honestly, it hasn't really changed my view. I like looking at the fight. I just feel like the most bearish thing about the fight to me is like the market movement on Virna. Like obviously she was a dog in her last 2 fights, and now she's a favorite here, which I never really like. Fading that dynamic, but I really don't think Lemos. I shouldn't say I don't think she offers many threats. I think she offers a lot of threats to Virna here. And if Lemos flatlines are here, I wouldn't be shocked at all.
No.
But I have the under too. I bet the under 2.5 at plus 150 also. I think it's very binary. I feel like if she can't get Lemos down, Lemos I think is going to knock her out. I'd be very
totally
surprised if Virna can walk through. Like, if Virna can walk through 3 rounds of a beating, she's going to take over the fight and probably submit Lemos. Honestly, I'd be very surprised if she could do that, though. The reason I like Virna though is because Virna knows what she's good at. You know, she cuts the cage decently well. She's decent at timing entries. I mean, she's going to get hit in the process, but I feel you have to put like Lemos finish pretty high up there to get to. Everybody says she doesn't do anything on top. I disagree. I think she's one of the best grapplers in WMMA, period. Not wrestlers, grapplers, but she is a pretty good wrestler. But I think you have to put like Lemos KO at a pretty heavy number to get to this price. Because I do think, first of all, it's not. I know the Duran fight's the easy parallel to John. I'm the mush of the week, yada, yada, yada. Whatever. I know I know it's an easy parallel to draw, but this isn't the Duran fight. You know, like that was a big cage. Duran's a lot sloppier. I kind of think if Virna gets her hands locked here, she's going to take Lemos down. And if she takes Lemos down, she's not getting back up. Just kind of how I view the fight, you know? I mean, pretty much everybody that's locked their hands against Lemos gets her down. Michelle Watterson did. Angela Hill did. I mean, Lemos just is not a very good grab. Yeah, well, the Zhang fight's a bit. I mean,
yeah, I know. Oh, totally different.
But even that, though, Zhang is not as position. She is, but she's not as positionally sound as Virna is.
No.
So I just feel like,
which is another interesting point too, because I know you got a lot of shit for the Virna pick, and people are saying, "Oh, she best wrestler she fought Wiley Zhang." It's like, do you know how good of a wrestler Virna is? It's like.
Yeah, I'm happy to take my wrestling.
Virna's solid.
I told people Petrosky was going to top time Frem last week too. I mean,
and I was there.
But anyway, I do think Lemos can knock her out, obviously, at a pretty high clip. Like I think it happens at a pretty significant clip. I just feel like you need to get like Virna at like minus 130 is almost 55% implied. You really need to get Lemos finished to like 40-ish% or more to like, or 40% really to justify that being the case. I know Virna doesn't have great cardio, but Lemos doesn't either, if we're being honest. Like you look at her late against Zhang, the best thing she did was not get subbed. I feel pretty good about Virna. I think she should be like minus 170 here. I have her to win 1.5 units. I have the under for a unit. If Lemos knocks her out, she knocks her out, but we roll. What do you think?
Well, I think that Lemos KO window is probably early in the fight too. It's likely that's first 7.5, 10 minutes. I don't see her really getting probably that late KO, just because if the fight does extend, it's likely because Virna's having success on top of her, getting grappling success. Because I mean, if we're going in round 4 here and she's not having top time, I think Lemos is likely knocking her out. To your point, so I played the under 3.5 rounds, minus 115.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fine. I guess I don't really have much disagreement.
I lean Virna though, but yeah.
I mean, I think either side can finish. I think one of two things is going to happen here. Virna either can't get her down, in which case she's going to get her head pinballed and probably finished, or she can get her down, in which case she's going to be spending loads and loads of time on top. And I feel the market's like, Mackenzie Duran got on top. She couldn't finish.
Zhang got
it's
on
like
top too, but like
Duran's not as Duran's. Well, I mean, Duran's a better submission grappler, but Duran's best subs are. But Duran's best subs are all from bottom. Like Virna's a much better top player than she is. So, yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens. I like Virna here though, and we'll see. Maybe I will have mushed it, but I don't care. I'm not worried about it. I think Virna's going to handle business. Anyway, guys, we'll be back next week. I think we got UFC 304.
Yes, we do.
Fun card, very, very fun card. I think we have, is it 2 title fights? I believe.
Let me verify that real quick.
Yeah, 2 title fights. We got Edwards Muhammad and Aspinall Blades. Bobby Green fighting Patty. Mokaev Cop. Arnold Allen Giga. That's a fucking sick card. So
Yeah.
I'm pumped to talk about it. We'll be back same time next week, 7 p.m. Eastern. Later, everybody. Peace.